Anyway, folks, welcome to another episode of the Jokatech Podcast. It's been quite a while. I understand that I have not many projects going on. I actually just finished a project, which was my last album in the Magnum Opus series. And I, not too long ago, finished the last book in the Magnum Opus series. So the entire work, the entire movement, as it was, has come to a close, and there's a lot to discuss as far as that's concerned as well, because there's a lot involved there, and I did a lot of blogging and talking about that. Some of it I didn't really go into the entire just the entire response and reception behind it, and some of the nonsense that I've noticed. But on this podcast in particular, some of the topics that I want to discuss range from just the loss of art in general. I want to talk about Anderson Silva's performance and how that correlates with that. Conor McGregor and his kind of outtake on things. I want to talk about just seriousness in general, technique. Also about the new book project I'm working on. Racism in general, and also just how just the mindset of society in general, how just, being lame is now cool. There's a lot of deep stuff to talk about, and I chose to do a podcast instead of just another blog. Well, one, because I've been missing a podcast in a while, and a lot of YTBC members have been out there reporting on a lot of what's going on in the boxing world, etc. And I'm like, I'm sort of an honorary member of the YTBC. So it's necessary for me to speak on it, being that I definitely have a much deeper education than a lot of these individuals that are commenting. And that in itself can be an entire episode. There's a lot that could be said. And just when I'm thinking that, I'm not sure if I'm going to do another podcast for a while, I could think of 3 or 4 podcasts that could be done in length. And I also try to entertain and just introduce new music, etc., and other stuff in my podcast. I'm not one of those lame guys that just sits down and, by now, I give you it all. But just the loss of art. When I look at Anderson Silva's performance, and I'm going to tie that in with it, because when you look at society in general as a whole, there has been a massive loss of appreciation of art. And I was just explaining it before, and I really, really stopped and thought about it for a second, and how deep of a thought that is. You're not going to see what he did last Saturday in his fight against Michael Bisping, who I'm a fan of. You're not going to see that ever again. And that's a deep thing to contemplate. We live in a world where artistic expression like that is gone. And the few people who are capable of it, you have your John Jones, and you have your Conor McGregor. You've got, LeBron James. You have a few people that I don't like to put LeBron in that category simply because he's a little old school. He's the same age as me, and he comes from that last generation of free-thinking individuals. Everybody else is just a drone after that. They've just become completely indoctrinated with a just mindless state of being. But a lot of the few athletes that are capable of giving you what Anderson gave that Saturday, they don't have the drive to do it because they're so tired of their fan bases, and there's no drive in them to even want to express like that. He was in the octagon, and they fought full 5 rounds, or 3 rounds, I can't even remember. No, it was 5 rounds, a 5-rounder. How it went 5 rounds is actually beyond me. But in the 3rd round, Anderson stalking Michael Bisping to the fence. Michael Bisping, his mouthpiece comes out for whatever reason. I have to go back and look at why that happened. Anderson, capitalized on the moment. He's well within his rights. Just like Hoist Gracie took Ken Shamrock down and pounded on him, in that Bellator event, and he got a TKO stoppage. Anderson went over, delivered a knee. It just shattered Michael Bisping's face. He falls to the ground. And Anderson doesn't even follow up. He just runs and walks around because Bisping was, for all intents and purposes, he was out. But Herb Dean didn't want to call the fight, and he was recently on Ariel Helwani's podcast talking about why his decision was valid. And he had a lot of deep things to say in there. I can't totally knock Herb Dean. He is the best for a reason, and I still stand by, as much as I can't stand him sometimes, he's a good ref. But Anderson was putting on a display, a defensive display, just showcasing, chi sao techniques and all sorts of kickboxing techniques and some of the Thai boxing that he's been studying, just showcasing a plethora of those techniques throughout the fight, just having fun like a kid in a candy store. And it went over everyone's head. I'm not saying that he definitely was robbed and he hands down should have won the fight, but it's just amazing that it just went across to everybody. It's just babble. It's just nonsense. What he was doing was just complete foolishness, and there was no sense to it, etc. That boggles my mind because it was deep. But it's like this generation is so out of touch with that. You're not going to see that anymore. You're not going to see any more of that artist who's just freely expressing and has that open mind. You're not going to see that anymore. Everybody's become just an X's and O's generation now, where it's just, really good at memorization and straight up and down movement. But when it comes to just flash, and as Floyd Mayweather calls it, styling, you don't see that anymore. The drive to do that just isn't there.
Now for a break.
So Anderson Silva's one of the last, and it went down as a performance that wasn't good enough on his part. When honestly, I'm not saying he should have won. Michael Bisping plotted forward, but anybody who's a practitioner and understands the old school method. The same way Skip Bayless has that argument with Stephen A. Smith, who's an idiot who thinks he knows boxing. As I've said many times, he represents the new connoisseur. The new connoisseur is an idiot that doesn't know anything, but swears that they're an authority on it. Every time I hear Stephen A. Smith talk about how I know boxing, I want to reach to the screen and just check his chin. You don't know a thing about boxing. You know nothing. Him and Skip get into it all the time about what happened on May 2nd when Maypac went down. And he has no understanding of actual technique, of positioning, of actual landed shots. He's totally caught up in the mystique. But nonetheless, sadly, anybody who understands it saw what Anderson was doing in there. It was amazing. And most people just didn't understand what he was doing. And when it comes to McGregor, Conor McGregor is amazing. And now everybody, even his fans, are waiting for him to lose. They're all waiting for him to eventually run into that guy who's too big, too strong, because they still don't believe. They still think that, he's a fly-by-night guy. But if you actually listen to him and the way he breaks down technique, as young as he is very, very, very old. And I mean that in a good way. He's very old school. He brings it back to traditional martial arts where you focus on body positioning, precision, movement, control of your body. And there's a couple of fans I've heard mentioning, how they understand that. He bases a lot of his technique around capoeira and a lot of the Brazilian techniques, even though people think he hates Brazil. But he's actually very versatile in his style. And he really, really, as long as he doesn't bite off more than he can chew too quick, he can go down undefeated in his career. But, people like him are going to have to show it before people understand. And just like Canelo can go down with the rest of his career having that one loss if he really focuses properly. And it's really a crazy fight coming up May 7th. Saul Canelo Alvarez versus Amir King Khan. That is going to be an absolutely explosive fight, and you really got to give credit to De La Hoya for putting that together, if it's true that that was his idea, which I think it was. That's an intriguing matchup, because everybody's writing Khan off, but those heavily into the boxing community understand he has some tools that can make it a little bit dangerous. We really don't know his ceiling. He had a couple of missteps early in his career, the Lamont Peterson fight, the Danny Garcia fight, and the Prescott fight, fights he should have won. And all these fights he was winning. But he's had these mental lapses, and a lot of people were writing it off as, just a lack of skill. But if you actually really look at it and look where Virgil Hunter's taken him in his last few fights, it's not just talk. Amir Khan has a very high ceiling of talent right up there with Mayweather and Pacquiao, right up there. And we really haven't gotten a chance to see that. And as Virgil Hunter aptly pointed out, his chin isn't as bad as people think, because he has more recuperative power than most boxers. Everybody looks at, he got hit, he got laced. You got to remember, the Prescott fight, he got caught and clipped, and then, it took him a while to recover. The Danny Garcia fight, he got clipped. The Maidana fight, he got clipped. And in all those fights, they ended up being TKOs because he has a very good recuperative ability. You can train somebody with recuperative ability. Now, if he had a glass chin, where when he gets caught, anytime he gets caught clean, he goes completely out, then there'd be some worry. But the reason why Amir Khan's been able to salvage his career is because his chin is not as bad as people think it is. And now with the boxing ability and the training and the proper weight that he has behind him, come up to 155, 160, and Virgil Hunter in his corner, we really can't just put a stamp on, this is where he's going to be. You don't know. Because it's very possible he could come in that ring and absolutely box circles around Canelo and really make you wonder, man, what if Mayweather would have come back and faced him? And I'm really curious to see, even though I'm a Canelo fan, I really don't want to see Canelo go down like that. Khan can make it happen. It's a very intriguing fight.